If you're a front-end engineer, it can be pretty overwhelming to determine what tools and frameworks you want to use to create remarkable front-end applications. So today I wanted to walk you through some of our choices and share what we're using for all of our new front-end applications to help limit the playing field for you a bit. So let's dive in. So when we're talking about modern front-end tooling, I'm focusing primarily on ReactJS. So ReactJS gives us a great balance of maintainability, extensibility, and a great library of options for us to play with to build great web applications. But we have so many choices, even after we've picked a particular framework. We have to decide on things like source code management, package management, transpilation and build systems. What do you want to do for state management and CSS frameworks, right? All of these choices can be pretty overwhelming. And what I wanted to do today was just work to limit the playing field for you and offer some advice and some perspective on some of the tools that we're using in our greenfield applications. So we really believe that the developer experience matters. Happiness of your engineer is going to lead to better productivity, better efficiencies, better cohesion amongst the team, right? So when we're talking about developer experience, we want to be thinking about what our overall cost of ownership is, and we want to bring efficiency when we bring change. So we have all these choices to make, but let's kind of share some of our curated selections from LaunchWare templates in front-end applications. At Launch, we love Git for source code management, pnpm for package management. We love TypeScript. We like Vite for building and transpilation, NX for monorepo management. We actually use native state and context, and we like React Hook Form and Zod for managing form state. We also like Tailwind and BEM for managing our CSS. And I want to talk through all of these choices and give you some perspective as to why we encourage the use of these tools. So Git for source code management is kind of the modern default I would share today. Most modern applications are being managed with Git. At LaunchWare, we love GitHub. Pull request workflow is something that has really allowed our engineers to level up. We can comment directly on code as we're working through it. But more recently, we've fallen in love with GitHub Actions as a continuous integration solution. So if you want something that's going to run reliably to perform your linting, run your automated test suite, all of those things, GitHub Actions really provides a wonderful suite of tools to make that happen for you. We also like some of the nice tooling that we get with GitHub around plugins and security vulnerabilities, things like that. So a Dependabot, which will kind of alert you when there are security issues with some of your dependencies, can really come through and shine as your application grows and evolves. We like pnpm for package management. This is actually a recent change. We were big fans of Yarn, but just found it to be slow and mostly really expensive on disk space. So if you use npm or Yarn, every time you run npm install or Yarn install, you're literally downloading a copy of a package into that root in your node modules folder. And all those files really add up over time. So what I like about pnpm is it uses a kind of global linked library so that you're only installing versions of dependencies in one centralized place. And pnpm kind of manages all the linking so that you don't have multiple copies of really large libraries on your system. We also really like TypeScript. In our experience, having done quite a bit of vanilla JS projects and even React projects with JavaScript, we've noticed that vanilla JavaScript leaves you susceptible to human error and misunderstanding of function and object-oriented contracts. So bringing typing into the equation allows for the developer to kind of have constraints and make sure that they're passing in the right type of object into their function calls. We like to say that it reduces cognitive load for developers because you're going to get so much more code assistance within VS Code or NeoVim or whatever editor you're using to make you more effective. And what we really like is the ability to publish and share types amongst libraries. Most importantly, when we're doing things like sharing a GraphQL schema between a server and a client, we can share those types using a build system like NX. We really like Vite for builds these days. If you've ever wrestled with Webpack or even ES Build, what I love about Vite is it just works. You won't spend a ton of time in config hell, and I find it to be really fast, and the hot module replacement is really snappy. So we really, really like Vite. We're big fans of monorepo architecture, and the big reason for this is correlating changes between a client and a server, or a front end and a back end. If you have them in separate repos, it's really difficult to coordinate and correlate those changes. So having everything in one repo allows for a full stack engineer to say add a GraphQL resolver or a REST endpoint and then write correlating client code that interacts with that backend, right? So it's really, really important for us to be able to, in a pull request, be able to look at both the backend and the front end changes so that we can more effectively review the code and get it merged into mainline. And lately, we've been using NX for monorepo management. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. Before NX, we were using Yarn workspaces, and it's prone to issues. And what I love about NX is it kind of does all the dirty, nasty stuff for you. And what I love, too, is that you can run CI against affected builds. So let's say you have 5 microservices in your monorepo, and your PR only involves 1. You don't want to run the entire test suite if it's just impacting that single application. So NX can manage that really well for you. We've dabbled with things like Redux for state and context management, and we just always go back to the native vanilla React state management. It's simple, it works, and if you know what you're doing when you're building contexts, you can be quite mindful of performance implications when you're doing it. So I really, really try to avoid Redux whenever possible. And I think that there's a really narrowing set of use cases to deploy Redux in your front-end applications where native state and context really shines in the latest versions of React. And we really enjoy using React hook form for some of that state management, particularly around form management and user input. The combination of React hook form and Zod really provides for wonderful opportunities for us to share types between forms and the payloads that we have to send up to backends. And when you bring Zod into the mix, you can do really, really great validation using native TypeScript types. Works really incredibly well. It's got a small footprint and it's hook based, and we really love using hooks here at LaunchWare. We found that it's pretty easy to integrate with other UI libraries. So if you're an AntD fan, or maybe you're bringing React Select into your libraries, this can be really, really handy for you. It does take some doing and some understanding of the internals of the library, but we find it to be really extensible, incredibly fast and performant, and just generally a joy to work with. And lastly, on the CSS front, we've been using Tailwind, really a combination of Tailwind and BEM, which stands for Block Element Modifier. So what we'll do is we'll use Tailwind to extend our CSS classes, and we'll use BEM conventions for naming those classes. And we find that that combination makes our CSS a lot more maintainable and easier to work with. Composing CSS classes with the Tailwind extensions really simplifies and eases some of the pain that can be associated with building really well-formed responsive designs. So I walked you through a bunch of tools. Let's put them in action. Stay tuned as I'm going to publish a walkthrough of us installing these tools, configuring these tools to build an app of consequence. So I'm really excited to put these tools to work for you and show you how wonderful they can be to work with. So I hope that you'll join us and you'll spend some time walking through some code with us in the next videos in this series. If you want to get notified of when those videos come on, definitely hit a like and subscribe on the video here, and I'll make sure you get a notification that when those new videos go live. So looking forward to getting into more code with you, opening up the editor and putting some of these tools to work. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.